Hi, I'm Pam East, and today I'm going to talk to you about post earrings in metal clay with no soldering. I'm going to show you how to embed a post. So the first question is, what material should the post be made out of? I don't really like sterling because it has a tendency to get very brittle and break when it's fired. You have to fire it very low, a little lower than I prefer. And I don't like fine silver because it isn't hard enough, it isn't stiff enough to make a good ear post. So the best thing I have found is titanium. These are some titanium posts, and when you look at them, you can see that they have a little pad on the end that allows you to embed it in the clay and stay in without pulling out. And what I like about titanium is that it's medically inert. It's not going to react. It's hypoallergenic. They use it in joint replacements. They use it in heart devices, and they choose titanium because the body doesn't reject it. The body doesn't react to it. So it's one of the most hypoallergenic metals. You can use it in copper, you can use it in silver, you can use it in bronze. It's going to work with all of them. This is a silver earring that I have used the titanium post in, and it's all fired. You'll notice I offset it, and I did that because I had a gemstone in the middle. I didn't want to cover up the back of that. I have a little sapphire in there. And so you can set it anywhere you need, depending upon the size and shape of the earring. You might want to have it at the edge if you want the earring to hang down. You might want it in the center if the earring is going to be centered. And this is art clay silver. So this was the pair that I did in art clay silver. This is a pair that I am working on. They're in art clay copper. So this is copper clay, and it's already embedded. You can see that I've already got them embedded in place. And these are actually ready to fire. And these are small, so I went, and they're still going to shrink some, so I went ahead and centered it. I thought that would be good for this design. And what I'm going to show you is the art clay bronze and setting a titanium post in the art clay bronze. Before you set the earring back, you'll have to decide if you want it centered, if you want it off center, how far off center do you want it. I had it way off center on that silver one. I had it dead center on the copper one. On this one, I'm going to have it slightly off center on the bronze. So I'm going to look at this and decide which way is down, right, or which way is up. And I think that I want this arrow shape, this pointy arrow shape to be pointing down, which means that this is the top of the earring. And I'm going to mark that so that I can see that when I'm setting the post. And so I've got a little mark that's showing me where the top of the earring is. The next step is to dampen the back. So I want to work the back with this sponge tip applicator until it has kind of a slippy surface. So I'm like creating slip on the surface so that it will take the new clay and the new clay will adhere well, because I'm going to be embedding this under clay. All right, so I'm leaving it pretty wet. And now I'm going to set up the little post, and I need a ball of clay. So here's my bronze clay. This is art clay bronze. And I'm going to grab a little ball of it. Let me put the rest away. And it's not very big. It's like the size of a petite pea or a lentil. It's a pretty small piece of clay. And I'm just going to take this titanium post and push it right through the middle of this. So there I have the post is going through the clay, and I'm going to set this on there. Now remember, here's my top. I want it a little bit off center. So that the heavier part of the earring will hang down and it'll be hanging in the right direction. So I'm sort of lining it up with that pencil mark. And now I'm going to take a rubber clay shaper, and I'm going to start blending the ball of clay into the back of the earring. I don't want to take it all the way down to that pad. I want to leave that covered up because the covered pad is what keeps it from pulling out. And then I'm going to continue blending all the way around. I want this to look organic. I want it to look like that post is just growing right up out of the piece. I don't want it to look like I attached a piece of clay. And blending with the rubber clay shaper is what makes that happen. So once I get it pretty well blended out, then I'm going to take my, and I want to kind of go around this post a little bit so that it's not built up on top of the post too much. But again, don't get back down to the level of that pad. Then I'm going to take a damp brush and I'm going to smooth all of this. Smooth it now while it's wet, because that's going to be way easier than trying to sand later. And you don't want to be sanding this and get back down to that pad. Really, you know, this is that bright number 4 that I love, the silver white bright number 4. And it's got the right amount of springiness that I can really manipulate the clay while it's wet. All right, there it is. So that's nice and smooth. And once it's dry, it will be ready to fire. One last thing you want to do before firing these is check and make sure there's no metal clay stuck to the post. So once it's dry, it will just chip off. I mean, you can use a scribe or you could use your fingernail, but it's just going to chip right off. And make sure there isn't any metal clay clinging to the post itself. When you're firing base metal clay, copper and bronze, you're going to need to use carbon. Carbon creates a reduction atmosphere. The carbon pulls in the oxygen, so you don't get oxidation on the copper and the bronze. I like to use steam table trays or steam table pans. This is a 1/9 size. It is 2.5 inches deep, and that is my favorite pan. And once you fire them, this is what they look like. When you first buy them, they're nice, bright, shiny silver, but one firing and they're black. Don't worry about that. That's normal. And you'll get a lot of use out of them before they get so warped you can't use them anymore. They're pretty inexpensive if you buy them from a restaurant supply, and I'll put a link down in the info section. And the other thing you're going to need, of course, is the carbon. And this is acid washed coconut carbon. That's what I like to use. And I'm going to be burying the pieces in the carbon in the pan. Now, before I start doing that, I am going to put on a mask, because when I pour carbon back and forth, carbon dust can get up in the air, and that's not something you want to breathe. All right, so I've got my mask on so that when I'm pouring this, I'm not going to be breathing the dust. Hopefully you can still hear me. And the key here is not too much carbon. So I'm putting maybe 1 inch of carbon in the bottom of the pan, and that's it. You know, that's all you need. And that's true for art clay copper, art clay bronze. That's true for Goldie bronze. That's true for Metal Adventures. I think Hadar clays have a different firing sequence. You'll have to check with them, check with whatever brand you buy. But for the ones that I've used, more carbon is not better. It actually makes the sintering worse. I get better sintering with less carbon. And then I'm going to just nestle these little earrings down in here. So they're nestle, nestle, nestle. And then I want to cover them so that the whole post is covered, because the carbon also protects the post. And I'm just going to put a little pile over that earring until the post is completely covered. And I'll do that over here. And that's all I need. I don't need any more than that. And then I put a lid. I like to use the lid with the slotted spoon rest, because you want a vented lid. And then this is going to go into the kiln. When you put the pan in the kiln, set it up on some little kiln posts. Now I like to use like a 1/2 inch or 1 inch at the most. And I just set it up a little bit so that it's not resting directly on the bottom of the kiln. That gets your heat better all the way around it. The other thing is, don't shove it all the way back into the kiln. You don't want this metal pan getting too close to the thermocouple. If it gets too close to the thermocouple, it's going to throw off the measurement, the reading the thermocouple is getting, and it's going to throw off your computer and you're not going to get a correct firing. So I usually actually, even though that there's no elements in the door of the kiln, I still leave it closer to the front than the back so that I'm not going to throw off my thermocouple. Now I'm going to go ahead and fire these, and while they're firing, I will give you all the schedules for the different metals when you're firing them with titanium posts.